My name is Sophia Grant, and no one at my luxury car dealership knew that I was their new CEO. They had seen my name on papers. They had read my emails, but they had never seen my face. And today, that was exactly what I wanted. I stepped out of the taxi wearing a simple burgundy dress, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed billionaire or owner. Just an ordinary woman walking into a place where everyone expected wealth, power, and a certain skin tone from their customers. The dealership doors slid open, releasing the cold blast of air conditioning. Inside, a group of salesmen in shiny suits were laughing loudly, champagne glasses in their hands. A new Bentley launch had just taken place, and everyone looked relaxed, too relaxed. Their jobs depended on me. But they didn't know that yet. I walked slowly past the parked Bentleys and Jaguars, pretending to be a customer. The marble floor reflected the ceiling lights, and my steps echoed softly. A female employee at the reception lifted her head, and for a moment I thought she would greet me. She didn't. She frowned instead, then deliberately looked away. Interesting. I reached the first car, an emerald green Bentley. Just as I touched the door handle, I heard footsteps and a cold, irritated voice behind me. "Excuse me," a woman snapped. "That car is not for browsing. Do you even have an appointment?" I turned. A short, stern-looking white woman in a cream suit stood there, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed. She looked like the kind of person who thought power belonged only to those wearing diamonds. "Yes," I said calmly, "I'm here for a purchase." "A purchase?" She laughed, loud enough for the men behind her to look over. "Of this car? Honey, this is a Bentley. This isn't a rental shop." She took a step closer, looking at my simple dress with disgust. "We don't entertain people like you," she whispered. The words didn't sting. I had heard worse in boardrooms. But the shock was realizing that this was my staff, my dealership, my brand, and they had no idea they were insulting the woman signing their paychecks. Just then, the security guard walked closer, confused. "Ma'am, should I remove her?" he asked the woman. The cream suit lady pointed at me as if I were a criminal. "Yes, security, get her out. She's wasting our time." The salesman at the back burst into laughter. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I simply looked her dead in the eyes and said quietly, "You sure you want to do that?" "Absolutely," she hissed. "People like you don't belong here." Then I heard someone call from the staircase above. "Everyone, attention please. The new CEO is arriving in 2 minutes." The woman smirked at me. "Oh, perfect," she mocked. "The CEO will love to hear how you tried to sneak around the cars." I smiled for the very first time. "No," I murmured. "I think the CEO will love hearing something else." The woman raised her eyebrow. "And what's that?" I took a small step forward and said clearly, "That you're fired." The laughter behind her stopped instantly. Her face went pale. The security guard froze. How dare you?" She stuttered. "Who do you think you are?" I looked around at all of them, and then at the massive dealership logo shining above. "I'm Sophia Grant," I said. "The CEO you've been mocking." Everyone went silent, but this was only the beginning. Because in the next 5 minutes, half the dealership would lose their jobs. The moment I said my name, a ripple of shock spread across the dealership. The woman in the cream suit later, I learned her name was Margaret, took a shaky step backward. Her lipstick red smile had vanished. The men holding champagne stopped mid-laugh, their glasses frozen halfway to their mouths. Only one person moved, the security guard. He slowly lowered his hand from his walkie-talkie, eyes wide, unsure whether to salute me or disappear. I walked forward, every step steady, every breath controlled. I had run billion-dollar negotiations. I had stood in boardrooms where men tried to drown my voice. This dealership tantrum was nothing. "Let's start with introductions," I said, my tone sharp but even. "You wanted to speak to the CEO? Here she is." Margaret swallowed hard. "Miss Grant, I had no idea. That," I cut in, "is exactly the problem." I turned toward the group of salesmen. They suddenly stood straighter, adjusting their ties, desperately trying to look professional. "You," I pointed at one of them. "What's your name?" he stuttered. James, ma'am." "James, I've been watching the dealership's performance. Sales have dropped 27% in the last quarter." Customer reviews say your staff is arrogant, discriminatory, and lazy. The words felt heavy in the air. Another man spoke up nervously. Ma'am, we can explain. I raised a hand to silence him. You had plenty of time to explain in your behavior. I just saw it firsthand. My eyes landed on the same group who had laughed at me earlier. One of them, the youngest, looked especially nervous, his face pale. You three, I said, laughing at a customer in your showroom. Is this how you represent my company? They exchanged panicked glances. No, Miss Grant, we were just laughing? I finished for him. He lowered his head. I took a deep breath and looked at all of them. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Right now, this minute, everyone who mocked me, judged me, or ignored me will step forward. No one moved, so I made it easier. Security, I called gently. The guard straightened up. Bring me the list of staff clocked in right now. He hurried away. Margaret suddenly stepped forward, her hands trembling. Miss Grant, I acted unprofessionally. Please give me one more chance. She wasn't apologizing because she regretted treating a stranger badly. She regretted treating the CEO badly. I looked straight at her. You know what the saddest part is? I asked quietly. You think you're the victim right now? Her lips parted as if to argue, but no sound came out. Just then, the security guard returned with a printed attendance list. Give it to me, I said. He placed the paper in my hand, and I glanced down at the names. I circled several with a pen, then lifted the paper high. These employees, I announced loudly, are suspended effective immediately. HR will finalize terminations after reviewing security footage. I read the names one by one: Margaret, James, the two men with champagne. The receptionist who ignored me. Gasps filled the room. One of the men whispered, "Oh my God." Another, near tears, said, "Please, Miss Grant, my family." I nodded. I understand. That's why I'm not firing you, yet I'm suspending you until HR concludes your case. If you truly treated customers well, you'll be safe. His shoulders loosened with relief, but only slightly. Margaret wasn't so lucky. You can't suspend me, she snapped suddenly. Anger returned. I built this showroom. I've worked here 15 years. And you learned nothing, I replied. 15 years? And you still treat customers like they're beneath you. You should have been leading by example. Her voice rose in panic. Please, Miss Grant. Don't do this, but her words were drowned out by the sound of her own legacy collapsing. I handed the list back to security. Escort the suspended staff to the meeting room, I said. They will wait for HR. Yes, ma'am. As the group slowly walked away, some furious, some terrified, some ashamed, I stood silently. This dealership needed more than a CEO. It needed a rebuild. But before I could start that, one person approached me quietly. A young woman in a simple navy uniform. Her badge read, Emily, Junior Mechanic. Ma'am, she said softly, thank you for doing what you did. I turned to her. You saw all that? She nodded. And I have something important to tell you, Emily whispered, glancing nervously at the office corridor. About what's really happening in this dealership. Before I could reply, she added, and about someone who has been stealing from your company for months. My heart stopped. The real storm hadn't even started. sense. The missing funds, the unexplained discounts, the sudden drop in profits. Who? I asked. Emily swallowed hard. That's the problem. There's not just one person. I raised an eyebrow. More than one? It's a group, ma'am, she said, voice trembling. A whole circle of them. A pause. They call themselves the Gold Club. The name made my skin crawl. A private group. Inside my own business? Running a secret operation right under the CEO's nose? Emily continued. They choose wealthy customers who look easy to manipulate. They offer special off-the-record deals. Customers think it's a bargain. The Gold Club pockets the cash. The cars leave with fake paperwork. Then they delete the entries from the system. My hands curled into fists. This wasn't a small problem. This was corruption. How long has this been going on? I asked. Emily lowered her head. Maybe 2 years? 2 years. That meant millions in losses. Why didn't anyone report it? I demanded. She gave a small, sad laugh. Because the ones running it are the ones in charge. Managers, senior staff, people like Margaret. My heart dropped. Margaret is part of it? Emily nodded. She leads it, ma'am. And the others follow her because she threatens their jobs if they talk. It all fit. Her arrogance, her confidence, her belief that she owned the place. Emily's voice softened. Miss Grant, I know I'm just a junior mechanic, but I've saved everything I could. Photos, screenshots, serial numbers, even recordings. I felt a sudden rush of admiration. And why did you collect all this? I asked gently. Emily looked down at her shoes. Because I knew one day someone would come who actually cared. Someone who wouldn't ignore me. Her eyes lifted again, filled with fear and hope. And today, you walked in? For the first time since arriving, I felt something other than anger, responsibility. Not just to fix the dealership, but to protect people like Emily who had suffered silently. Emily, I said, lowering my voice, I promise you, this ends today. Before she could respond, the garage door suddenly creaked open. We both froze. Heavy footsteps echoed inside. A tall man in a suit stepped in, face stiff, jaw clenched. It was Richard, the dealership's general manager. He looked at me, then at Emily, and his expression darkened. Well, he said slowly. Isn't this interesting? Emily's face went pale. He stepped closer, glaring at her. Snooping around again, Emily? I told you there are consequences. I stepped between them immediately. She's under my protection, I said, voice steady. Richard smirked. Oh, I know exactly who you are, Miss Grant. His eyes narrowed. And trust me, you just stepped into something much bigger than you think. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice. You should have stayed out of this. My pulse quickened. Emily whispered urgently, Ma'am, he's part of the Gold Club too. Richard smiled coldly. Oh, I'm not just part of it. He pointed a finger at his own chest. I run it. Richard's confession hung in the air like poison. I run it, he repeated, stepping closer, his polished shoes echoing on the concrete floor. Emily instinctively moved behind me. Her fear was real raw, and it told me everything I needed to know about the kind of man Richard truly was. I kept my posture calm, but inside I was calculating. Interesting, I said. Because last I checked, the only person running anything here is me, Richard chuckled. It wasn't a friendly laugh. It was the kind that comes from a man who thinks he is invincible. Miss Grant, he said, crossing his arms, you may be the CEO on paper, cut your ribbons, sign your contracts, show up for magazine photos, but this dealership runs because of me. He walked in slow circles, like a predator assessing its prey. You have no idea how things work here. People trust me. Not you. I've been here since the beginning. Staff listens to me. Customers listen to me. Even the board listens to me. He leaned in. You? He scoffed. You're just a figurehead the board hired so they look diverse, so they look modern, nothing more. Emily gasped softly. My jaw clenched, but I kept my voice cool, calm, like a storm about to break. Are you done? I asked. Richard smirked. Oh, far from done. He pointed toward the glass showroom. You think you can fire half the staff? Suspend managers? Walk in here pretending to be a customer just to create drama? He stepped closer again. This dealership is mine. I handpicked the people here. I built the Gold Club, and let me be very clear. His face moved dangerously close to mine. If you try to fight me, you will lose. Emily whispered, "Ma'am, don't listen to him." Richard snapped at her. "Shut up." I stepped forward until Richard had no choice but to step back. "You shouldn't talk to my employees like that," I said quietly. "Especially not the ones who are helping me expose your crimes." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his eyes. I continued, "Emily has evidence. Audio recordings, screenshots, numbers that don't match, cars that vanished, customers who never existed, and now..." I tapped my finger on my phone pocket. "I have your confession." Richard froze. "What?" "You openly admitted to running a criminal operation inside my dealership," I said. "And my phone has been recording since the moment you stepped inside." His face drained of color. You wouldn't dare," he whispered. I smiled. "You underestimate me, Richard, and that is your biggest mistake." For a moment, he looked like a man who had seen his empire cracking. But then he laughed again, loud, cold, confident. "You think a recording will save you?" he said. "You have no idea what I've planned. I control the security cameras, the accounts, the staff. And if I decide to turn everyone against you..." He snapped his fingers. "They will," Emily trembled behind me. He went on. "The board won't believe your story. They trust me. They depend on me, and you're new, fresh, easy to replace." He emphasized the last word. Then he leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper that chilled my blood. "If you try to bring me down, Sophia, I'll make sure you lose everything." A long silence followed, then I spoke. "You're right about one thing," I said slowly. "I am new here," I stepped forward. "But you're wrong about everything else?" Richard's smile faded. I continued, "You don't run this dealership anymore. You don't own these staff members. You don't control the board. Because as of this morning..." I pulled a folded document from my handbag. "The board handed me full investigative authority. I have the power to fire, suspend, or prosecute anyone." Richard's eyes widened, panic slipping through the cracks. "And you, Richard," I said firmly, "are done." He inhaled sharply, angry, scared, desperate. But before he could respond, the garage door swung open again. A group of employees rushed inside, not to support Richard, but because chaos had erupted in the showroom. "Miss Grant," a salesman shouted breathlessly. "You need to come quickly, something's happening." Richard shot me a look of pure hatred. Emily tugged at my sleeve, voice urgent. "Ma'am, please don't go out there with him." This could be a setup, but I straightened my shoulders. "No, it's time to end this." I walked past Richard. And as I pushed open the door to the showroom, I saw something that made my heart drop. A crowd of angry employees, holding signs with my name on them. And the words, "Sophia must go." Richard stepped beside me and whispered with a smirk, "I told you, they follow me." The moment I stepped into the showroom, a wave of noise hit me like a crashing tide, shouting, chanting, angry voices blending into chaos. Dozens of employees stood in a circle holding makeshift signs, printed paper tape to broomsticks, cardboard from car accessory boxes, anything they could find. "Sophia must go, bring back Richard, our real leader, nitrogen monoxide to the new CEO." The words hit harder than I expected, but not because I was afraid, because it proved something. Richard had been planning this for a long, long time. He stepped beside me with a smug confidence, his voice low and dripping with satisfaction. "See, Sophia, this is loyalty, something you can't buy, something you'll never have." I didn't react, I didn't flinch, I simply observed. Half the employees shouting, the other half watching silently from a distance, uncertain, afraid, wanting to speak but too scared. Emily came out behind me, pushing through the crowd carefully. Her eyes were wide as she whispered, "Ma'am, they don't all support him. Many were forced to come out. Margaret used to make lists of who protested and who didn't. Of course she did. Fear breeds obedience. And Richard had fed them fear for years." Someone in the crowd yelled, "Go back where you came from." Another shouted, "You don't belong here. You're destroying our dealership." My jaw tightened, but not because of the insults, because of the lies. Richard raised his hand like a dictator silencing his army. Instantly, the crowd quieted. Then he stepped forward, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Miss Grant here thinks she can walk in and ruin everything we built. She's firing loyal staff. She's staging some fake investigation. She wants to break the real family we created." Cheers erupted. I waited. I listened. Because timing matters more than power? Richard turned to me with folded arms. "Well, CO, say something. Your staff wants answers." A hush fell over the room. All eyes shifted toward me. I walked slowly right to the center of the showroom. Directly under the bright white lights. Directly between both sides, the fearful and the furious. And then I spoke not loudly, but clearly. "Who here has ever been threatened for disagreeing?" Silence. Every eye darted around nervously. "Who here has ever been forced to stay quiet when something wrong was happening?" A few hands twitched, but no one raised them. "Who here has ever seen a customer mistreated? Or watched a manager steal credit for your work? Or felt unsafe reporting anything?" This time, the silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, like people holding their breath. Richard scoffed loudly. "Here we go." Playing the victim card, I turned sharply toward him. "No, I'm playing the truth card." I took out my phone, clicked a button, and my voice echoed through the dealership speakers, not my voice. Richard's. The recording played loud and clear. "I run it. This dealership is mine. If you try to fight me, you will lose. I control everything here. Even the board listens to me." The employees froze. Gasps echoed through the room. Some covered their mouths. Some looked directly at him with betrayal in their eyes. Richard's face went white as bone. I walked closer to him, phone still in hand. "You're right, Richard," I said softly. "This dealership did follow you, but they weren't following loyalty. They were following fear." I turned to the employees. "Look around you. Look who's shouting. Look who's silent. Ask yourself who here actually wants the truth?" Emily stepped forward, braver than I've ever seen her. "I do," she said. Her voice shook, but it was strong. Then another mechanic stepped forward. "Me too." A receptionist. "I do." A young salesman. "I've been scared for years." One by one, more employees stepped out of the crowd. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly choosing truth over fear. Richard's control cracked like thin glass. "Stop!" he yelled. "You all work for me." "No," a deep voice said from the back. We all turned. It was Mr. Dalton, the board chairman. Beside him stood two security officers from head office. Mr. Dalton's eyes were filled with disappointment. "Richard, you're finished." Richard's mouth fell open. "You can't fire me." "I'm not firing you," Mr. Dalton said coldly. "The police will handle you. Sophia has full authority." Two officers stepped forward. Richard backed away, panicked. "No. No, you can't do this. She is lying. This is all a setup." But the officers grabbed him. He thrashed, shouted, cursed. But his voice no longer mattered. The staff watched silently as he was escorted out. Then Mr. Dalton turned toward me. "Sophia," he said proudly, "take control. Clean this dealership. Bring it back to life." I nodded once. Because I already knew everything was about to change. For a long moment after Richard was dragged out, the entire dealership stood frozen. The shouting was gone. The anger was gone. Only silence remained. The kind that comes after a storm has torn everything open. I took a deep breath, stepped into the center of the showroom, and spoke. "Everyone who wants to stay? Stay. Everyone who wants to leave. You may walk out right now." No consequences. There was no hesitation. Not a single person moved. They weren't standing still out of fear anymore. They were standing because for the first time in years, they felt safe. Slowly, I nodded. "Good," I said. "Then let's start over." The rebuilding for days, the dealership buzzed with change. 1. HR arrived. They reviewed files, interviewed staff, protected the innocent, and removed every corrupt member connected to the Gold Club. 2. Security swept the network. Richard's hidden accounts, deleted invoices, fake customer profiles, everything was uncovered. 3. Training sessions began. Real customer service, real ethics, real leadership. The dealership transformed from a battlefield into a family. And through it all, no one worked harder than Emily. Day after day, she stayed late. She documented everything. She helped investigators. She coached newer staff. She checked every car, every VIN number, every file. One evening, after a long day, I found her alone in the garage, wiping grease off her hands. "You saved this dealership," I told her. She looked startled. "Ma'am?" No, You were the only one brave enough to speak up," I said. "The only one who kept evidence. The only one who believed the truth mattered." Her eyes filled with emotion. "You're not just a mechanic, Emily." I reached into my bag and handed her a document. "You're my new assistant service manager." She gasped, covering her mouth. Sophia, I don't know what to say. You deserve it," I said, "and this place needs leaders like you." For the first time since I'd met her, she smiled fully wide, relieved, proud. That smile was the first sign we were finally healing. The grand reopening 2 months later, the dealership held a grand reopening. Bright lights, press cameras. Banners that said, "Now under new leadership," customers lined up. Former clients returned. Sales soared again faster than ever before. During the ceremony, Mr. Dalton whispered, "You did what we couldn't. You saw the truth when we ignored it. And this dealership, it's alive again because of you." But I shook my head. "Not because of me," I said. "Because we finally replaced fear with respect," he smiled. "Then give your closing speech." I stepped onto the stage. My staff now stood proudly in front of me. I spoke from my heart. This dealership fell apart because people stopped listening, stopped caring, stopped being accountable. I paused, then smiled. But today we are building something new. A place where every employee matters, where every customer is valued, where truth wins over corruption, and where people aren't afraid to speak up. The crowd applauded. "And as long as I'm CEO," I continued, no one will ever be silenced again." Behind me, Emily wiped a tear from her cheek. The final moment as the celebration wound down, I stood outside the showroom, watching customers walk in and out with smiles on their faces. The glass doors reflected something I hadn't seen in months: hope. Emily joined me quietly. "Ma'am," she said softly, "do you think this place will really stay good?" I looked at her. "It will," I said. "Because now we have leaders who do the right thing even when no one is watching." She nodded slowly. "And because you were brave enough to speak," I added. She blushed. "Thank you, Sophia," I smiled. "Thank you, Emily, for saving more than a dealership. You saved its soul." We watched as the lights glowed warmly inside. The storm was over. A new era was beginning. And for the first time, the dealership finally belonged to the right people.